Okay, we're in Mark 13, verses 17 to 31. Just how bad will it be?
It's the same.
I know, that's right. This is still the part of the Olivet Discourse. This is the time when Jesus is speaking to them. He's seated up there in their usual little hangout spot. And right across from the temple, there is an expression which you may or may not have ever heard. To be forewarned is to be forearmed. In other words, if you know about something that you're warned about, something that's going to happen, then that will arm you beforehand to do something about it. It can be as simple as your car is warning you. The car is really not warning you, but the car is making a funny noise, and you go, well, it'll be okay, it'll go away. Next day, it's same sound, or maybe it's getting worse.
A little louder.
Yeah, a little bit louder, as if to say, you're not paying attention to me, I'm trying to tell you something. And if we do, and we're forearmed about it, we can solve the problem before we're on our way to Dallas and it finally stops running. So, but the same is also true with the things that go on in our own lives that are not necessarily connected with these mechanical things. Yes, ma'am. Oh. Basically, if we know what could happen and we do nothing about it, then we are at fault for suffering the result. And the reason why this is brought up is because Jesus has been prophesying to his followers about the end times. They didn't ask a question. They didn't ask a question. Really, they didn't say, "Oh Lord, would you tell us about the end times and what's going to happen?" And there's a word on the street if this is going on. No, that's not what they said. They said, "Teacher, look at the big stones that the temple is made of. Aren't they wonderful?" And that was the beginning of. Actually, I'm going to tell you the truth. Not one stone will stand. They'll all be torn down, which was very shocking to them. But then he continues to go on. He uses this as because he hasn't got that much more time to talk to them. And he needs to tell them a lot of things. And concerning his authority and his foreknowledge, things that he knows before it happens, we would be foolish to ignore his words. He's trying to forewarn people and us because we're reading this. And if we don't pay attention to it, then it's going to seem as if this came out of nowhere. He even told his followers, "You must be on your guard and watch out that no one deceives you." Well, all you got to do is talk to any number of people, and they're going to be people trying to deceive you. So let's go to verse 17 of chapter 13. Don't you love Dollar General? Or no, Dollar Tree?
Yes, actually. It's wonderful.
You can get glasses. Because you know you're going to break them. Okay, verse 17. How dreadful it will be in those days what days?
Last days.
The last days. How dreadful it will be in those days for a pregnant woman and nursing mothers. Pray that this will not take place in the wintertime. The wintertime was the time when all the rivers overflowed their banks and there was flooding, and it was, just think of that horrendous wind and rainstorm that we had not that long ago. Pray that this will not take place in the winter because of that, because those will be days of distress, unequaled from the beginning. So these are going to be days that are going to be so distressful.
My Bible says tribulation.
Right.
Days
right.
of tribulation.
Days of tribulation.
The King James says it right.
What does it say?
It says, in those days shall affliction such as not from the beginning created with God. Until the time neither shall it be.
Okay. So in other words, these are going to be times that are not only have never happened before, but are never going to happen again. It's going to be that bad. Because those will be days of distress unequaled from the beginning when God created the world until now, and never will be equal again. Verse 20, if the Lord had not cut short those days, no one would survive. But for the sake of the elect, and the elect are his chosen people, whom he has chosen. Well, there you go, answered my own question. He has shortened those days. If he hadn't shortened those days, then nobody would survive. There would not be a living soul on the earth. But why is it that it is important for there to be, obviously not all the Jews are going to survive, but why is it important that there be what we would call a remnant? You ever gone into the store to Lowe's or Home Depot and you want to buy some carpet, but you don't need enough. You only need a 12 by 12. You don't need to buy off the roll or whatever. And so you look through a bunch of partial rolls that are called remnants, and you find the size or as close to the size as you can. So there's going to be a remnant of Jews that are going to be left. Because why? Why wouldn't God allow all the Jews to be killed? I mean, it's not that they don't, for the most part, it's not that any of us deserve not to be.
Because he said, because he promised.
Who did he promise?
He promised Abraham.
He promised Abraham, the first Jew, if you want to look at it that way, which is, in reality, that's what it is. He promised Abraham, he gave a promise about that he would be the first of a people that would be as numerous as the stars in the sky or the grains of sand on the beach, or in this case in the desert. So isn't that wonderful? He can't say no to something he's promised. His word is so important, and it's so capable of, he's incapable of not keeping his word.
It's infallible.
Yeah. And I love that about him, because people in general can't be trusted to keep their word. Something else comes along that seems more important to them. Oh, well, I'll see him some other time. I know I made an appointment to see him at this time, but that's okay. This is more important to me right now. God says, no. If I promised it, it's going to happen. There's nothing that you can say to make me change my mind. It's the way it's going to be. In the end, he's faithful to keep his word. At that time, if anyone says to you, look, there he is. There's the Messiah. Do not believe it. For false Christs and false prophets will appear and perform signs and miracles to deceive the elect, if that were possible. So be on your guard. I have told you everything ahead of time. In other words, if I didn't tell you this was going to happen, and it catches you off guard, and it catches you by surprise, then my fault. I didn't tell you. But I've told you. I've told you this is going to happen. In fact, my guess is that when it's getting close and these signs begin to start appearing, we're going to remember, or they're going to remember in their minds, they're going to remember what Jesus had told them. We're going to remember what we read. And we're going to say, that's right, that's what Jesus prophesied. That's what he told ahead of time. And he's the only person that, as far as I'm concerned, that can be trusted when it comes to that. There's a lot of so-called people that are prophesying the future, but in the end, Jesus is the one that I can trust. So be on your guard. I have told you everything ahead of time. But in those days, following that distress, okay, so let's think about this for a second, because he's about to take this. Remember, the future, the way we view the future. We view the present, we remember the past, and we look forward to the future. The way God looks at these things is somewhat the same way. Remember the Goodyear blimp? We say, well, the Goodyear blimp is above the Rose Bowl parade or the whatever parade it was. From the blimp, how much of the parade can you see, would you guess? The whole thing. Because you're so high above it, you can see the beginning, you can see the end as if it's one thing. But for the reporter that's down on the street, how much of it does he see? He sees the part of it that passes in front of his eyes. Oh, well, look, here's Donald Duck or whatever, here's whoever. And then, and here comes the marching band from so-and-so high school and whatever. God sees all of everything that's going to happen from beginning to end. He sees what it was like in the very beginning of creation, and he sees the end of creation, and he sees it as one thing. So it is a little hard for us sometimes to get a grip on the fact that he's talking about this distress. Now, he said it's a distress that's coming on the world that is unequaled from the beginning of time until this point right now, and it will never be equaled again. That distress or that tribulation, there is something that's going to happen, and he says right here, but in those days following that distress, so after that distress, and if you were to look into Daniel the prophet, you would see that there's going to be 3.5 years of what Jesus is calling the distress or the tribulation. There's 3.5 years. There's a total of 7 years. So there's 3.5 years of the distress or the tribulation. And then there's the next thing that comes along after that, immediately after that, is 3.5 more years of the Great Tribulation. You just think it's been bad the first 3.5 years. The second 3.5 years is when the Antichrist, when the person, he shows his true colors. He's done a lot of wonderful, appears to be wonderful things in the first 3.5 years. He's made a treaty happen, He's a diplomat between the Arab nations and the Jews to allow, or Islam, to allow the building of of a new temple, which is what a lot of Orthodox Jews want to see happen. They don't understand that when Jesus died and the curtain of the temple was torn in two from bottom to top to bottom, I can't remember which one it is, but it's the hardest direction for it to go. In other words, this curtain is like this thick.
And made out of sheepskin.
And it's not an easy thing. So when that happened, it opened, the symbol was, it opened up the Holy of Holies, where the Ark of the Covenant sat, which is the most holy place. It opened it up to where we no longer needed the priests, we didn't need anybody, we could go directly to God. That was the whole deal. That was the whole reason for that happening. So we can say, with assurance, I can go directly to God and I can talk to Him. I don't have to go to the priest and say, would you intercede on my behalf? Would you be my advocate, my attorney, my whatever? Would you plead my case? No, we don't need to do that. So Jesus has made that way for us. So that's what so let's see what's going to happen, because the first 3.5 years we knew about, they call it this distress. But in those days, verse 24, following that distress, following the very first 3.5 years, these are going to be the signs that people are going to see. And the Jews are big on signs and wonders. The Greeks want to sit down and discuss it all and debate it. The Jews say, give us a sign or a wonder so that we know that this is going to be true. The sun will be darkened. Okay, we know that as like an eclipse. And the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from the sky. And the heavenly bodies will be shaken. Now, we don't know whether some of this is the language that had been used for a long time by the prophets to talk about the end times. It doesn't mean that the stars are going to fall from the sky necessarily. Who knows? But the sun will be dark. In other words, it'll be an abnormal day. It'll definitely be something that will say something's up. That doesn't happen every day. Verse 26, at that time men will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds with great power and glory. And He will send His angels and gather His elect from the four winds, His chosen, the Jews. Gather them from the four winds, from the four directions, north, south, east, and west. From the ends of the earth to the ends of the heavens. Why? What's the story? What's the story about us? The Jews are the elect.
We're the grafted in.
We are, if we believe in the rapture, we believe that before all of this happens, again, depending on which theory you believe in, that the rapture will take place before this great distress happens, or before even the distress happens. And so we will not be here to see what's going to happen to the rest of the world. The Jews, however, and we're talking about those that
not all of us.
never bought into it.
Not that one.
Not this
Not
Jew.
that,
Right.
Not that Jew.
Yeah, they're going to be together with us. that's a whole different story. But Jesus is talking to his disciples about something that has he hasn't died on the cross yet. He hasn't. Remember we sang in the song that we were justified, and there's another song that says we were justified by the Lamb being Jesus. Justified, the greatest definition of that word. It's kind of like a legal term, and it means to be justified means to be just as if I had never sinned. When Jesus died for us and forgave us, it is just as if it never happened. We never sinned. That's what justification is all about. That is the thing that the Catholic Church has the hardest time with. It isn't justification. It's good works and it's all this other stuff. So that they had councils where they debated all of that. Now learn this lesson, verse 28. Learn this lesson from the fig tree. As soon as its twigs get tender and its leaves come out, well, we were around here not too long, well, it's been a while ago now, when you started to see the little not the buds, but you saw the little new leaf start to come out of the end of the branch, and it was the beginning of the new growth for the this would have been around the springtime. I guess we had a spring.
Season changing, that's what
That's right.
it's the season will definitely be changing.
Now learn this lesson from the fig tree. As soon as the twigs get tender and its leaves come out, you know that summer is near. Even so, when you see these things happen, you know that it is near, right at the door. I tell you the truth, this generation will certainly not pass away until all these things have happened. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. Now I've got a little bit better.
Yeah, I have an explanation. I have an explanation of that verse.
When you see Jerusalem being surrounded by armies, this is in Luke 21:20.
Like right now, even, maybe, in Iran, just saying.
When you see Jerusalem being surrounded by armies, you will know that its desolation is near. Instead of running to the walled cities for protection, which is, by the way, normally, we forget about the fact that not everybody lived in Jerusalem. They lived in the neighboring we know that Mary and Martha and Lazarus lived in Bethany, which was down the Mount of Olives. And there were people that lived in all these villages. But when there was a really big deal coming, like when Nebuchadnezzar was marching in with his army, the Babylonian army, they would run to the walled city. We have in our American West history what was built.
The Alamo.
Well, no, but I mean, what was built before that against the Indians?
The cavalry.
That forts. So we still have places, and they'll still call. Actually, the Alamo was a church, but anyway. They would go to the walled city for protection. But Jesus is saying now, when you see Jerusalem being surrounded, don't go there for protection. If you go there, you're like saying, I'm gonna run into the mousetrap to avoid being caught.
It's like running to the beach with a tsunami coming.
Yeah, don't do that.
Only you say flee, don't even go up and get your cover.
Right? He tells his people to flee to the mountains, for the city is going to be destroyed. So flee to the mountains, get as far away
You know,
from because Jerusalem, and by the way, this is kind of my view on things. One of the reasons why I don't like big cities is that I was around when the Hollister earthquake took place in California, and I was in San Jose, and while San Francisco was shaking, and it wasn't even the center of the earthquake, it was in Hollister, it was quite a ways south. When the Oakland Bay Bridge, when those sections collapsed and cars were driving across, whatever. So you can have the big city. You can have those elevated overpasses. Yes, exactly.
Rises, sky rises, they
Yeah.
all fall down.
Yes, and everything that goes up does fall down. The generation that will be alive during these things will not pass away until all these things have happened. So in other words, if you're living during that time, you're not going to pass away until all of this has come down, until all of this has fallen apart. But he's quick to say, heaven and earth will pass away. But not my words. The things that I've said will never pass away. So he's really saying to all of these folks, his disciples, and everybody that's listening, there is something coming that I can't tell you how terrible it's going to be.
But the reference is there's never been a time like it on earth and never will be again.
Mhm.
So, take the worst state you've seen on planet Earth and multiply it infinitely.
Yeah,
But the promise is what we hold to.
yeah. I'm going to read. I don't know why I didn't stop here, but I'm going to do this for our sake right now. The next verses talk about the day and the hour unknown. No one knows about that day, verse 32. They don't know about the day or the hour. Everybody wants to know. Well, what day is this going to happen? Is it going to be before noon? Is it going to be afternoon? Sounds like us talking to Spectrum. When are you going to be here? Well, we have an open door. It'll be on this date. Oh yeah, but is it before noon, afternoon, whatever? I'm not going to sit around here waiting for you to show up.
So a day that ends in Y.
Yeah, exactly. Not even the angels in heaven nor the Son, but only the Father knows. Be on guard. Be alert. Why do you need to be alert? Because he's saying, when you see these signs happening, you gotta get out of Dodge and quick. You can't say, oh, well, let's pack our stuff. Oh, and don't forget Aunt Tilly's hope chest. We need to take that with us. No. Don't even take time to get your cloak. Get out of Dodge. I mean, quickly. Go to the mountains.
No time for selfies.
No, exactly.
Let's keep watch.
You do not know when that time will come. It's like a man going away. He leaves his house, and he puts his servants in charge, each with his assigned task. And he tells the one at the door to keep watch. Okay, your job. You guys do your job. I'm leaving. But you stand by the door, and you keep watch. Therefore keep watch, because you do not know when the owner of the house will come back. The owner of this world is going to come back, and you don't know when that's going to be. Whether in the evening, or at midnight, or when the rooster crows, or at dawn. If he comes suddenly, do not let him find you sleeping. What I say to you, I say to everyone, watch. Here is, when it starts to get that serious, then he's talking to the people that are living in Israel. He's talking to the people that are maybe some of them are actually living in Jerusalem. He's actually covered both bases. He's saying, if you live in Jerusalem, get out of there, because that's the focal point.
That's the center of the world as far as
Yep.
God's concerned.
Yep. Not only that, but when you think about all of the turmoil that's been going on in Portland and Chicago and all these places,
Atlanta.
yeah, it's because they're a big city. That's the focal point. That's where they're going to be. You live out in the country somewhere, you don't get as much. What are you going to say? You're not going to make as big of a splash if you attack some little village, some little town somewhere. But if you take on a big city, then that's another story. And in this case, that would be Jerusalem. And for the people that live out in the villages and live out in the sticks, those people, whereas normally they would run to Jerusalem, he's saying, don't do that. Forget about what you've done in the past. When you see these things start to happen, when you see the soldiers an army starting to surround Jerusalem, don't go to Jerusalem.
You know its destruction is near. That's what it says.
That means get out of town and get out quick and head into the mountains. Hide in the caves, do whatever it takes. That's from the point of view of the Jew. This is what Jesus is telling them ahead of time, because they are his chosen people, and he wants them. There's going to be a certain number of them that are going to be saved. Now, are there going to be some that are going to say, "Oh, I don't believe all of that stuff. I'm going to Jerusalem because that's where the army is, and that's where we'll be saved."
Common sense.
Yeah, it would seem sensible to do that, but he's saying, no, don't do that. So, but I love this where it says in verse 26 and 27, then men will see the Son of Man coming in clouds. Jesus even mentioned this when he was being questioned before he was crucified. You're going to see the Son of Man coming in the clouds. When you see that happening, that's kind of like we're going, yes, yes, the time has come. All the people who said, no, this would never happen, and I can't believe you believe in this kind of stuff, we're saying, look, we place our faith in Jesus Christ and his promises and what he promised. Now, when this happens, there are going to be those of us that are going to have already passed away, and there's going to be those that are still alive, and we're told in other places how that the dead in Christ will rise first, is what we're told. And then the people that are still alive are going to be caught up in the clouds. As far as we're talking about in terms of the rapture. Rapture means caught up.
Harpazo is the term which translates to rapture. Harpazo.
Right. Okay. So let's do our last